At precisely 11:47 p.m. on January 6th, 2026, residents of Stary Oskol, a Russian city of 220,000 people, woke to the sound they had heard far too many times. Explosions. Then silence. Then the unmistakable orange glow of burning fuel tanks lighting up the winter sky. Hey, I'm Archers, and today we are talking politics. Within minutes, amateur footage flooded social media. Multiple tanks at the Oskolneftesnab oil depot were engulfed in flames, a fire visible from kilometers away. Russian Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov confirmed what everyone already knew. He said several tanks caught fire and firefighters were working to extinguish the blaze. This was not a random attack. This facility, one of Belgorod Oblast's largest fuel suppliers, had already been hit 3 times before. And this strike is part of something much bigger. A drone campaign so devastating that it is doing what 3 years of Western sanctions could not accomplish, bringing Russia's war machine to its knees. To understand what is happening, you need to see the full picture. Since January 2025, Ukrainian drones have struck 21 of Russia's 38 major oil refineries. That's more than half of Russia's entire refining infrastructure under attack. Some facilities have been hit 4, 5, even 6 times, each strike coming just as repairs finish, forcing an endless, expensive cycle of damage and recovery. The numbers are staggering. According to Reuters, at least 17% of Russia's total refining capacity, over 1.1 million barrels per day, has been disrupted. At peak damage in autumn 2025, industry sources reported nearly 38% of primary refining capacity sitting idle. The Kirishi refinery near St. Petersburg, one of Russia's largest, had to shut down its main processing unit after a drone strike in October 2025, knocking out 160,000 barrels of daily capacity. The Belgorod refinery, which produces 15.7 million tons of fuel annually and directly supplies Russian military logistics, has been struck multiple times. The Ryazan refinery, Russia's 4th largest, has been hit so often that a Moscow court ordered mapping services to delete its images entirely. And the reach of these attacks keeps expanding. In June 2025, Operation Spiderweb sent 117 drones across 5 time zones to strike Russian air bases as far as 4,300 kilometers from Ukraine, deep into Siberia. Russian military bloggers called it their Pearl Harbor moment. How is Ukraine pulling this off? The answer lies in one of the most impressive military-industrial achievements of the 21st century. In just 3 years, Ukraine has transformed from a handful of drone manufacturers into a nation producing over 4 million drones annually, with 96% of them domestically built. The workhorse of the oil refinery campaign is the Luty drone, Ukrainian for fierce. With a range of 1,200 kilometers and a 75-kilogram warhead, it is responsible for roughly 80% of successful strikes on Russian oil facilities. Each one costs about $200,000, a fraction of what it costs Russia to repair the damage. Then there is the Boba, meaning beaver. Commissioned by Ukrainian military intelligence through crowdfunding in 2022, it can travel up to 1,000 kilometers carrying a shape-charge warhead designed to penetrate hardened targets. It costs roughly $95,000 per unit. But the game changer is the FP-5 Flamingo, a cruise missile drone hybrid that entered mass production in August 2025. At 12 meters long, with a 1,150 kilogram warhead, larger than a Tomahawk cruise missile, it can strike targets 3,000 kilometers away. That puts 90% of Russia's military-industrial complex within range. Ukraine has also mastered swarm tactics. Attacks now routinely involve 100 to 200 drones of multiple types launched in coordinated waves. Cheaper decoy drones saturate Russian air defenses, clearing paths for strike drones to reach their targets. Russian military systems designed to track aircraft and missiles simply cannot cope with dozens of small, slow-moving, low-flying drones approaching from multiple directions. The impact on Russia's economy has been nothing short of catastrophic. Fuel shortages have spread from Vladivostok to Crimea. In occupied Sevastopol, gas stations ran completely dry. Tankers emptied within hours of arriving. Rationing limits customers to just 20 litres per visit. In Russia's Far East, wholesale gasoline prices have surged 50% since January 2025. One Russian newspaper warned the country faces its fuel crisis since the 1990s. The numbers tell the story. Russian retail gasoline prices have risen 12.6% year over year, more than double the official inflation rate. Rosneft, Russia's largest oil producer, saw profits plunge 70% in the first 9 months of 2025. Lukoil's profits were cut in half. Combined, Russia's major oil companies saw twofold to threefold profit declines. In a humiliating reversal, Russia, one of the world's largest oil exporters, is now importing fuel from Belarus. Gasoline shipments jumped 168% in a single month. Putin even signed a law subsidizing Russian companies to refine oil at Belarusian refineries and import it back. Perhaps the most telling sign, Russia's government has classified its fuel production statistics, hiding the true extent of the damage under the guise of information security. Ukraine's general staff estimates these strikes have reduced Russia's annual GDP by over 4%, inflicting $74 billion in economic damage since January 2025 alone. This isn't random destruction. It's calculated economic warfare that Ukrainian officials call kinetic sanctions, doing physically what Western financial sanctions failed to accomplish diplomatically. And here's the genius of the strategy. Ukraine deliberately avoids striking crude oil export terminals. Why? Because targeting export infrastructure would spike global oil prices, alienating Western allies concerned about fuel costs. But refineries only affect Russia's ability to turn crude oil into usable products like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. As analysts at Foreign Affairs explained, these strikes reduce Russia's ability to turn its oil into usable products. They do not affect the volume it can extract. With less domestic refining capacity, Russia is forced to export more crude, pushing global prices down, not up. Sergei Vakulenko, a former Russian oil executive now at Carnegie, offered a brutal metaphor. Russia's refineries are like a man being repeatedly punched. He won't die from one punch, or even half a dozen, but it becomes harder to recover after each blow. He could end up being beaten to death. The campaign also exploits a critical vulnerability. Russian air defenses weren't designed for this threat. Systems like the S-400 and Panzer track aircraft and missiles, not cheap, slow-moving drones flying at treetop level. A $600 drone can now threaten multi-million-dollar infrastructure protected by billion-dollar defense systems. For a long time, Washington was not on board. In March 2024, the Biden administration reportedly asked Ukraine to stop hitting Russian energy infrastructure, fearing oil price spikes and Russian retaliation. Vice President Kamala Harris personally delivered the message to President Zelensky. Ukraine ignored the request. Deputy Prime Minister Olha Stefanishyna declared refineries are legitimate military targets under NATO doctrine. Then came a dramatic reversal. In October 2025, the Trump administration announced massive sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, Russia's two largest oil companies. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called it a direct response to Moscow's refusal to end its senseless war. But the real shift came quietly. According to NBC News, the Trump administration is now providing intelligence assistance to help Ukraine plan long-range strikes on Russian energy infrastructure, a complete reversal from Biden-era policy. The logic is simple. With global oil markets in surplus, there is room to squeeze Russia without spiking prices at American gas pumps. And the White House has calculated that crippling Russia's war funding capacity is worth the risk. So where does this lead? The International Energy Agency predicts Ukrainian strikes will suppress Russian refinery processing rates until at least mid-2026. Analysts warn shutdowns could reach 25% of total capacity if the current pace continues. Putin himself has been forced to acknowledge the crisis, albeit without admitting its cause. At a September 2025 forum, he conceded that they were facing a gas shortage and that their grid economy requires development. His solution was to suggest Russia rely on coal reserves that he said will last for almost 1,000 years. It is a stark admission from a leader who built his power on energy wealth. Ukraine's message is clear. Every refinery fire, every empty gas station, every ruble lost is a direct consequence of Russia's choice to invade. And unlike sanctions that can be evaded through shadow fleets and friendly intermediaries, you cannot sanction a drone strike. As the Stary Oskol oil depot burned into the January night, for the fourth time, the smoke carried a simple truth across the border. Russia's ability to fund this war is literally going up in flames, and Ukraine is just getting started.